Hello everybody, welcome to the podcast, and this particular podcast is about Spongebob and Squidward and their self-reliance journeys. I am one of your co-hosts, Josiah Bodivia, and my other co-host is...
Joseph Lear here, everybody.
And we, obviously, like I said earlier, are talking about Spongebob and Squidward and their self-reliance journeys. If you don't know the TV show that they're based off of, SpongeBob, it was made around 1999, and it's about SpongeBob doing wacky things around Bikini Bottom with his best friend Patrick, Sandy, and occasionally Squidward if he's feeling a little crazy that day. And this show had some cultural significance because there are certain episodes, I don't know particularly, but there are certain episodes that people could have taken life lessons from that they could carry to this day in their day-to-day lives.
So continuing on this motion, I would like to explain why we are doing this specific podcast, and that is for one man, Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was a very influential philosopher in the late 1800s, but more in particular, he wrote an essay called Self-Reliance. And for those who don't know self-reliance, I'm going to pull up a quick Google quote for you guys. It's the need for each individual to avoid conformity and false consistency and follow his own instincts and ideas. So to summarize what that is, basically, you do what you want to do without anyone else's influence, and you encourage others to do the same, where they do not follow anyone else's footsteps and believe in what they believe in exclusively. One minor point I'd like to point out here is that when we cover both SpongeBob and Squidward, we'd like to point out that SpongeBob itself is not necessarily a consistent TV series. So when we talk about a point, it's not necessarily chronologically because each episode's its own random adventure. There's no two episodes that are the same. And when there is, we are not covering them. So just to make it simple, we're just going to arrange our points rather than what's within the TV series. We're not going to do that. We're just going to do what's based closely to our evidence.
Okay, so before I get into my getting to my first evidence we're talking about here is the Ripped Pants episode that came out in season 1, episode 2. This episode was... before I get into the episode, particularly, I'm going to talk about the quote that goes along with the episode. And we are now men, and we must accept this, we accept in the highest mind the same transcendent destiny, and not minors and invalids in a protected corner, and not cowards fleeing before a revolution, but guides, redeemers, and benefactors, obeying the almighty effort, and advancing on chaos and the dark. So this quote is talking about how we should accept our destiny and stuff, and shouldn't be like other bad people in a sense. What were you gonna say, Joseph?
Oh yeah, I was saying how when you first pointed out the quote, you're over here and we are now men. That kind of reminds me of the first SpongeBob movie when they sing the whole song about how they're gonna be men when they grow up and put mustaches on.
Very true, bro. I love that little song about that. And we are now men. I must change my underpants now that we're men. Amazing. Also, to clarify my quote, I meant when I was explaining it in layman's terms, I meant to say you must accept your destiny, and after you do that, you're supposed to teach others how to be self-reliant. That's what I meant to say. I messed up earlier. Sorry about that. But getting to the actual episode itself, the Ripped Pants episode is basically SpongeBob going to the beach, and he was doing some contest for something, and he ripped his pants, and that garnered more attention for him, and that made everyone laugh, and he kept doing that continuously throughout the episode, which made him like a laughingstock. But he liked the attention that he was gaining from it, and after he did the ripped pants joke multiple times, he then started to not gain as much attraction, and people started to care less because he took it too far once and pretended he was on the verge of death, and then he said he ripped his pants, and that's when people said, nah, this is not funny anymore.
That was true.
Yeah, and afterwards, after he did that stuff, he self-reflected on himself. It didn't show specifically throughout the episode, but it showed him talking with other people how they messed up in their lives, and he realized that he shouldn't be doing that to get that attention because it's not worth it. It's not a good source of attention for him, and it doesn't help the public. It doesn't help anyone getting that specific sort of attention. So then after he realizes this, he then creates a song and starts talking about don't be like the fool who ripped his pants, because you don't want to be the fool. Because who wants to be the fool? That's not really fun being laughed at, in a sense.
So, one thing I wanted to point out, though, is that you said when he made a song about it, but when you look deeper into the episode, when he sings the song, doesn't he get attention too? Because he's playing with other people who rip their pants and they're singing about a song. So throughout the whole episode, wasn't wanting the attention, but he craved it, but then inevitably when it all went away, he just became depressed. But then even when he became depressed, everyone saw it and he still got attention. So how is that necessarily self-reliant?
He did gain attention, but like I said earlier, like earlier, he was getting bad attention because he was being a fool. He was being a court jester for everyone. And in this one, he was presenting himself in a different way, different light, and he was preaching to others about how they shouldn't be a fool, like specifically the fool ripped his pants, and they should be like their own person and do their own things throughout life instead of just trying to get attention from the general public. That's why.
Yeah, that works.
What's your favorite part of this episode from the ripped pants? Because I know you don't like the song. I love the song personally.
Nah, it was just not for me. But like within ripped pants, like I guess it was kind of cool where it's like where you see him like kind of all down, and then like you see other people praising him, like for what he did in that episode.
Where he sings the song.
Yeah, like I didn't really like the song, but like at least it was cool how they like supported him even when he was down, like in a life lesson kind of thing.
True. Well, why don't you like the song? What particularly? Because I know you can get very picky.
It's like when it comes to like the song, like at least all other major songs within SpongeBob, like they at least have like a funny tune or like something that like makes you kind of like there's a solid consistent tune, but like when they're singing, it's like very like flat note, like it's just kind of like as if they're kind of like it feels like they're like at gunpoint singing the song, but they just kind of arranged it. I don't know. That's how I personally see it. It's like when Sandy did her Texas song in the first season, where it's like at least that actually sounded like she had like talent with like vocals and all that, even though could come along the same things I'm saying. But like I don't know. It's like with SpongeBob trying to sing, it's either hit or miss. But like with this song, I would consider it a miss.
Oh, okay. Well, personally, one of my favorite songs from an episode. But going into another evidence about another thing to point out is that I was supposed to talk about SpongeBob and his decline of self-reliance. I know I didn't mention that earlier, but I'm sorry, I meant to mention that. And Joseph here was doing it about Squidward's increasing self-reliance over time.
Mm-hmm.
I know I didn't mention that, and I know it's kind of late, but yeah. Another evidence to point out his decline, well, in the beginning, his original self-reliance that he had, is the Pretty Patties episode that happened in Season 2, Episode 5. And the quote that went along with this one was, "To be great is misunderstood," from Chunk 3. And this episode is, the Krusty Krab wasn't generating as much revenue as Mr. Krabs wanted to, because, money. And, the homie SpongeBob came up with an idea to come with pretty patties that are colorful patties that are, like, each person can choose based on the color that they really like. Mm-hmm. And originally, Squidward and Mr. Krabs laughed at him and saying that was a stupid idea. And while he didn't mope around for like a couple minutes, like for a couple seconds, he went back to his home and started selling them independently. And then originally there wasn't gaining no traction, but as soon as one person took a chance and bought it, it became an immediate hit success within the Bikini Body community, and everyone loved it. And then as soon as Mr. Krabs saw this, he bought the company from SpongeBob and he made bank.
Yeah, like I really love the episode too, and how like even when Mr. Krabs ended up buying it over, he even gave SpongeBob his life dream of owning the Krusty Krab in order to take over the business, which I think is a cool thing because it's like SpongeBob finally got his wish, but Mr. Krabs ended up paying it off due to his increasing amount of greed, wanting to get what was like the main moneymaker.
That's true. Mr. Krabs' greed is always the worst thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. What is your favorite? Do you like this episode particularly?
I mean, I like it. It was one I grew up with as a kid. But, like, I really loved how, like, even what I mainly love is the ending of it, where it's, like, everyone who ordered, like, whatever patty they had. So it's, like, say, for instance, you have, like, a Scottish fish. He ordered, like, it had, like,
the Scottish pattern?
Yeah, like the pattern.
Yeah, is it necessarily Scottish, or just, like, plaid?
I think it's plaid, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Mm-hmm. So I think that was cool.
Alright, now going into SpongeBob and him losing his self-reliance throughout, like, the seasons. In Season 1, Episode 11, The Buff Pants in Society. And the quote that can go with this is that he must take himself for better or for worse as his portion. Which means that you should accept yourself as who you are, and you shouldn't actively trying to change yourself, like, physically or any other ways. And what happened in this episode is that SpongeBob, if you remember, this is the episode where he was lifting his weights, his teddy bear weights, and then Sandy comes in and then she demonstrates her strength, and he's like, "Damn, she's strong." But he doesn't think much of it. But then when he goes on Muscle Beat, no, actually, don't think about it. He does think much of it, and then he mopes a little bit, and he's sad that, like, "Damn, I'm not as strong as Sandy. I wish I could do something." Yeah. And then the infomercial comes on, and it's Plankton, which I now realize is Plankton, the voice actor, doing an ad of a shark. saying, if you want to get ripped, just buy these inflatable arms, and all the girls will come near. And he bought it, and he went to Muscle Beach and showed off his fake inflatable muscles to Larry, living like Larry the Lobster. They showed that to him and all his buddies, and he was showing off. And also then Sandy came, and she was also impressed. And then throughout the episode, they went to the bar, or not bar, like a juice bar. Juice bar. It's kid friendly, man.
Mm-hmm.
The kids can't drink alcohol.
That's true.
Okay, so they went to the juice bar, and then Sandy put a cup over his inflatable hand, and he couldn't remove it, which is like so dumb because he's like, that's just really dumb. I couldn't move a freaking plastic cup over his hand.
In front of everyone. And that happens.
Yeah, and then after that, then what's her name again? Oh yeah, Sandy. She saw like a competition to do, and she was gonna involve Spongebob into it, and he was like scared as death. He's like, no, I don't want to. These are fake. I'm not gonna win. And then as soon as he relinquished himself from the prison of the glass on his hand, he ran to the box, the voting box or submission box. There you go. And tried to remove his name, but he couldn't. He was already entered into the competition. And as soon as he entered the competition, he was demolished and exposed as a fake. And this shows that like he wasn't really being self-reliant. He wasn't really accepting for him who he was as a person and accepting like his body as well. Like, and he was trying to body modification actually. No, not body modification.
No, it's honestly
like an extension, I guess. Yeah. Like crutches. No, I'm just kidding.
Nah.
Do you remember this episode, Joseph? Or do you like this episode? Or actually, sorry. What's your favorite episode?
Like in general, or just before
in general?
In general, it really depends. Where it's like, for pertaining to this particular topic in particular, like Buff Pants itself, like I don't know. It wasn't one. I watched a lot of SpongeBob growing up, but not particularly Buff Pants. It wasn't necessarily a part of it.
Remember Buff Pants?
Nah, I actually ended up remembering the other episodes more, but for Buff Pants in particular, like with this episode, like I particularly liked it, like rewatching it to cover this. Like it was a cool episode where it's like SpongeBob kind of got what he deserved because it's like he was trying to like appeal to everyone, but then now he's just kind of going against it.
True.
So it's like that's what I really loved about this episode.
What?
Like because like it showed how like conforming to the society, kind of like how
it backfires on you.
Yeah, it backfires on you trying to conform. Like kind of like how what Emerson said that where he must take himself for better for worse as his portion.
Yeah. All right, on to my next evidence of SpongeBob's descent into, I would say madness, because honestly, dude, as like the seasons go, he just comes through like, because like originally like people say like it's stupid the show, and like it's kind of dumb and childish, which I can agree with. Yeah. But throughout the first couple of seasons, I say they kept like some decent adult humor in there as well, and other humor. But like as it became more and more, I guess, is it because they went more mainstream? Do you think that's why it became stupider in a sense? Because that's like so dumb. Because like the early seasons, like they're really good. The comedy's pretty nice. Sorry, I'm kind of sick, so I'm bringing the coffee for a little bit. But on to our next evidence, Hooky from season 1, episode 20, and the quote, the Emerson quote that will go along with this is, "Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist," which means don't conform to society. And this is exactly what SpongeBob did. He didn't necessarily conform to society, but he conformed to the will of others, which they in society. So yeah. In this episode, the SpongeBob was looking at he was going to work, but then he saw his buddy Patrick messing around with hooks, and then after he was like, I don't want to do that. That's pretty scary, man. But then Patrick's like, come on, let's do it. And SpongeBob instantly went like, okay, and then he started doing it, and then after he was having fun and all, like getting pulled up to the ceiling. I think that's the ceiling, but the top of the water. Yeah. He went there and was like having fun falling back down. And then Mr. Krabs came by and said, don't do that, that's really bad for you. But then he did keep doing it with Patrick. Oh, my voice sounded weird right there. But yeah, he kept doing it with Patrick. And then Mr. Krabs scolded him. And then he like tricked him in a sense by he attached the hook to him and kept scaring him throughout the day to never do this again. But like it just shows how he's so willing to easily conform to like the ideas of others, and he's like really easily influenced in a sense. Sorry. Joseph, what are your thoughts on the episode?
like the episode, I loved it, especially on the GBA video cartridge. That was really cool seeing it on that old screen.
How scuffed is that quality? Is that like 64p?
No, it looks cursed, especially on a cooler, better screen. But like looking back on, even that worse screen, like the episode itself, it's cool because like kind of like how you said, where it's like, when you do look back at it, like you see SpongeBob consistently trying to do whatever he feels. But I feel like it is kind of mean on Mr. Krabs' end because SpongeBob wasn't necessarily like it's both like a yes and no scenario because like when Patrick and SpongeBob did it, they were just kind of messing around with fishermen, and how they were trying to like play on the hooks and all that.
Cookie.
Yeah, but. Another, like, it was like a yin to the yang, because it's like, SpongeBob and Patrick are having fun, but Mr. Krabs says no. And it's like a life lesson, being like, just don't tempt fate in that kind of sense.
Yeah.
But then it ended up being on how, in the very end of the episode, Patrick ends up becoming fried.
Oh, yeah, he did.
So it's like, when that portion of it happens, where it's like, yeah, he was a nonconformist, but it's like not necessarily saying go to the top kind of thing, kind of like what Emerson's saying. Like, when Emerson was saying whoso should be a man who shouldn't be a nonconformist, it's more or less on the end of like, you should follow in his footsteps. But in reality, if you kept following Patrick, you end up becoming like him, fried on the seafloor.
Dude,
but if you...
I'm like, on that, like, whenever they show, like, realistic versions of them, it's so funny, because remember the episode whenever, I don't remember specifically what happened, but Mr. Krabs went, like, he became real. Was this Genie or someone? But I remember, like, it was him and a piece of butter. It was, like, a real-life crab.
Oh, it was, when it wasn't Patrick, it was, Plankton, when he became Mr. Krabs in the robot form.
Oh, yeah,
ravioli, give me the super ravioli. That episode. So, within that episode, like, he ends up, like, tricking SpongeBob into thinking to feed him into
the secret formula.
Like the secret formula.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is that he thinks the fake crabs ends up being the real crabs, just feeds them and then brings them out in the like realistic crab and butter that you see.
Yeah, that was funny. Alright, yeah, going on to my final piece of evidence of SpongeBob's descent into madness. I'm gonna call it his descent into madness because like it really is in a sense. Is the normal consistency from season 6, episode 6. And the quote that goes along with this is, "A foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. With consistency, a great soul has simply nothing to do." So that basically means don't fall into consistency. Don't fall into a rut where you do the same thing over and over each day. Which is something happens to Squidward.
Yeah.
Am I right, big man?
Yeah, we're coming a little bit close on that, but continue.
Yeah, that happens to him. And basically, you don't want that to happen because great minds won't flourish in that kind of environment. But that's exactly what happens to SpongeBob. He gets in a rut. In a rut, yeah. Because, Squidward, the hater. I call him in the early episodes.
It depends.
In the earlier episodes, I'd say he's more of a hater of SpongeBob. And he's like, will you stop being you? Stop being all weird and stuff? And SpongeBob actually like, okay, and he did it. And he became like a hollow shell of himself where he was like, instead of being square, he was like very rounded out and smooth and polished. It was very weird, and he was just doing the same thing. He was in a cubicle, like he was working in an office, just printing out patties, which I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
How do you have 3D printers under the sea? That makes no sense. But yeah, so basically he was doing that, and he just lost his entire sense of SpongeBob. He wasn't him. He was just a shell of SpongeBob doing whatever he needed to do. Like, not even whatever he needed to do, just doing the same thing over and over, printing patties. Which just goes to show like how SpongeBob he's easily influenced by others because he listened to Squidward, and how like he fell into a rut and just like never really left it. He did leave it throughout the episode because like the episode has to like resolve in some way, but it's like it just shows like how he's so easily influenced and easily able to like do opposite of self-reliant throughout that episode. And what you said, something you want to bring up, SpongeBob?
So,
what's up, SpongeBob? No,
talking about SpongeBob, have you not seen normal SpongeBob? Like, as much as he's just round and he just like has a little funny voice like this.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah. So, like, whenever he has that, like, to put it in perspective, if you rewatch the episode, when you look at what SpongeBob, the main reason why he reverts back to SpongeBob after seeing normal Squidward.
That's true, because normal Squidward is very cursed.
You do not want to see it.
It has the aspects of SpongeBob, and where he's like very rounded. He's really round, but even more round. Like his cheeks are more pronounced.
It's like more perfect.
Yeah, and it's just like, it's just like so.
It's cursed images.
Smooth, but it's weird.
Yeah.
Ugh. But yeah, that's all that I have for you guys about SpongeBob and how he descended into madness at the beginning of the season to like near the end of it. But I'm gonna give it to my co-host here, Joseph Lira, who also is Bernie.
Yeah, that do be true, but... So, I'm gonna start segmenting into Squidward and his slowly descent into self-reliance. He just, the opposite of Josiah. And
What's the opposite of madness?
Yes.
Tell me.
So...
No, I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna first go over my first evidence, which is him going crazy over SpongeBob, which some of you may know as the Are You Finished With Those Errands episode. So, to summarize the episode, basically, Mr. Krabs ends up losing his arms trying to get a penny in a drain. So then, what happens is that Mr. Krabs is now gone, and he appoints Squidward as the most senior person there as the manager. And so Squidward thinks, oh, I can just have the easiest day of my life and just let SpongeBob do everything. Well, I can chill at home. So when he does this, he gives SpongeBob the capability of taking over the cash register. But within that, he starts developing the most severe case of self-doubt I've ever seen in my life, in which perfectly encapsulates the Emerson quote, "In the attempt his genius deserts him, no fuse befriends, no invention, no hope," which is in Emerson Chunk 1. This really encapsulates what Squidward was, because throughout the episode, you see him consistently thinking of SpongeBob doing extremely horrific things to the Krusty Krab, and in reality, he's doing nothing. He's just chilling at his post.
Oh yeah, isn't he wearing like both of his hats?
Yeah, like he's wearing both the cashier and the fry cook hat.
They're exactly the same though.
So Squidward slowly goes mad doing this. So it's like, you see him constantly thinking, like, oh, he's gonna burn down the place, oh, he's gonna give so much money to Patrick, and that kind of stuff. But whenever he comes back, SpongeBob always replies with, "Are you finished with those errands?" So Squidward's going completely, like, almost berserk at this point.
Yeah,
and so he even comes back home, and he's like, "Look at yourself. You're losing your bluish glow. Stop worrying so much. Now repeat after me. You will not go back to the Krusty Krab." And immediately within his thoughts, he sees SpongeBob burning down the Krusty Krab, and he's like, "I will destroy the Krusty Krab." And so that makes Squidward extremely enraged, and so he runs back to the Krusty Krab, and he goes to SpongeBob, being like, "I know what you've been up to, forcing me to come here every time you mess up." But then SpongeBob repeatedly keeps saying, "But I haven't." Squidward's like, you haven't messed up yet, but you will, and I'll be there." And then he runs off. But when Squidward finally has his breaking point, he straight up runs bare naked with only bubbles on his body, covering him. Runs straight to the Krusty Krab and starts, like, bullying SpongeBob. But the problem is that
he's done nothing wrong.
Yeah, he's done nothing wrong. So Squidward is just going mad. You can even see it in his face.
Oh, in his whole appearance, he's like become disheveled,
like,
and
he's like dilapidated.
Yeah, he looks horrible. It's very funny.
So the whole point, how this connects with Emerson, is that you see him like he has no self-reliance, he has no self-confidence in what he's doing by giving SpongeBob control of the Krusty Krab. But what's even more ironic, Krusty Krab is closed.
So there's nothing he could have done to actually destroy it.
Exactly. So nothing could have happened, which really proves Squidward's self-doubt. Like, it's that bad, and his self-reliance is that bad. So
would it really be self-doubt, or is not necessarily him trusting others?
Not really. It's like, I mean, you need self-reliance in order to trust others.
True.
But to put it in, to quote that episode, it is season 2, episode 1, Squid's Day Off. So now, moving on to evidence number 2 that I have, it is taking credit for someone else's work, which is the SpongeBob sleepwalking episode, which is when SpongeBob, what happens is that he falls asleep, but he can't fall asleep within his dream. So what he does, what any sane person would, he just goes to everyone else's dream. So within everyone else's dream is that he just goes into different people and just interacts with them, which ends up screwing them over. So what SpongeBob does is that he goes into Squidward's dream, and with Squidward's dream is already going off pretty well, you can see. Squidward is pretending to be Mozart, and he's over here composing for everyone else. Like, he's playing his clarinet in front of everyone, the king and everything. So he's presenting it, and what happens is that he's slowly getting booed. And so what happens is that SpongeBob comes along in the dream. And so what ends up happening is that SpongeBob transforms into the clarinet, and he's like, "Just play me." But then Squidward's like, "No, why should I?"
Oh wait, he actually transforms into the clarinet?
Yeah, SpongeBob turns into it. It's a dream. So
yeah.
SpongeBob transforms into the little clarinet, and so he plays it. And before he plays it, Squidward's like, "Please, SpongeBob, no tricks." And so when SpongeBob starts playing, it's the most annoying thing to
Wait,
Squidward.
does he play himself, or is he like standing? And
No,
playing?
because you see Squidward moving his tentacles like a clarinet.
Oh, so he's like faking like he's playing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but like SpongeBob's just doing like the most obnoxious noise like coming out of him as a clarinet. But what's happening is that he's actually playing good music to everyone else in the theater. So when Squidward stopped, he's like, SpongeBob! But then the king interrupts him. He's like, why did you have to stop playing that wonderful music? And so Squidward reluctantly keeps going with playing SpongeBob. And eventually when he finishes, he's like, thank you, thank you. But when they all come on for an encore, like they all pile onto the stage, they shove Squidward to the side and immediately start praising SpongeBob. Which really goes into the Emerson quote, It may be safely trusted as proportionate and of good issue, so it be faithfully imparted, but God will not have his work manifest by cowards. And by the main point of cowards being Squidward taking the credit of SpongeBob singing, basically enhancing his performance in front of everyone. So he was saying thank you, when it was SpongeBob doing all the work and he was just kind of there holding him.
True. Okay. But we're talking about the actual episode itself, not necessarily SpongeBob in particular. Isn't this the episode where it's just Patrick on the damn, the seahorse?
Yeah.
That's his dream, and doesn't he lose his quarter?
Yeah, he's like, shoot, that's my last quarter. And he's just kind of chilling there as SpongeBob leaves. SpongeBob shows him the vast possibilities, and he's just like, nah, I'm gonna ride that
I wish
seahorse.
I got my seahorse, man.
Yeah. So now, moving on to my next quote, we have from the infamous Squidsville episode, which is him falling into society's hands, which Isaiah pointed out earlier. So within this episode, it is very famous in where SpongeBob and Patrick inevitably destroy Squidward's house, and within the remnants of his destroyed house, he's over it. He does no longer want to be near SpongeBob and Squidward. He doesn't want to be near SpongeBob and Patrick, and so what he does is that when a TV falls onto the ground,
miraculously survived the crash of a whole house, and the screen still intact, and somehow plugged in electricity under the water, showing an ad to Squidsville, where all squids apparently live, because apparently there's a whole town of squids that consider themselves higher than the other sea creatures.
Yeah, so Squidward is just casually looking at this ad, seeing how life could be better without him. Like, you can see all the different moai heads, you can see all the different squids.
Life could be dream.
So, you see all of this prosperity, and then you see Patrick immediately turn the channel because he's bored. So he immediately switches back and he's like, oh, I should move here. And so Squidward gathers his remaining objects, which is essentially just his bike and his clarinet, and he just kind of moves over. And so when he moves to this new town, he realizes that, like, when he finally moves in, everyone, like, is doing the same exact thing. So when he starts getting up for his day, he's over here like, oh, I think I'll take my bike today. I'm my own man. And then he looks outside and sees every other squid in the town doing the exact same thing. And at first he's like, now these neighbors know how to live. And so you see him go throughout his days, going through every single thing, every single day that he dreams of. And so he wakes up the next day and he's like, oh, look, everyone else is on their bike today. And so what happens is that after this point, it's just consistent, like, repetition of him going into insanity. Like,
it's the same thing every day, over and over and over.
He's riding his bike. He's getting his favorite canned bread.
He's doing yoga.
He's doing his yoga. He's doing
his bike. He's doing clarinet.
Yeah.
And then eventually he just becomes over it.
He just becomes depressed because he's sick of doing it. So, sarcastically, he's like, yep, this is great. You might as well rename this town to Squidward's Paradise. Or perhaps Too Much Paradise. So, what happens is that this completely encapsulates the Emerson quote, a foolish consistency is a hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. With consistently, a great soul has simply nothing to do. Which is obviously stated when Squidward just literally does the exact same thing every single day and cannot innovate. The only time Squidward is seen to have fun is when he starts doing what no other squids would, which is playing with...
The leaf blower.
Yeah, the leaf blowers. He kept playing with those, and that's what made him different. And that's what made his soul technically greater.
Just because all the other squids act like they're all mature adults, which essentially they are throughout this, and Squidward just shows his more childish side, which is essentially showing his inner SpongeBob.
That's true. So it's like showing how, even when he's showing him going descending, like from self-reliance, like he still has like glimmers of hope that he can be.
Yeah.
So this was from the season 2 episode 6 episode Squidsville. By the way.
they're all just different versions of Squidward, right? Essentially, because like either like the girl versions of him is just like a wig with plastic. Yes, plastic.
Yeah.
Wait, chapstick. Not chapstick. Lipstick. There you go.
Mm-hmm. So now moving on to my evidence 4, we're gonna start moving into the positive side, where he starts to become self-reliant, where he starts to prove himself wrong by believing in himself. So within the season 2, episode 15, infamous episode Band Geeks. You see, in this episode, Squidward's much richer and more famous counterpart, he had a band, but he couldn't make it to the Bubble Bowl, which is like a Super Bowl game between like 2 college football teams, and for some reason, and like with humans, even though this is a sea creature TV show.
But are they like a dome, like Sandin's dome, but instead of air, it's just full of water?
I mean, I don't even know. They went from the Pacific Ocean to Texas.
They went
So
to
I don't
Texas?
even know. It looked like a Texan stadium. So it's like, continuing. So what happens is that Squidward starts bragging the fact that he has this really good band and he's going to perform there. And so what he does is that he believes in himself that he can create like a brand new like band that in which he does not have, and try and make that his own band that he can perform in the Bubble Bowl. So what happens is that he gathers everyone and starts creating like this band. But the problem is that maybe some people know how to play an instrument, but like it's not Patrick where
His mayonnaise an instrument.
Exactly. So, and then even worse, they're over here starting brawls. Like Patrick literally became a trumpet.
Oh yeah, that's what
Does
his
that
neck
even-
gets stuck in the trumpet. Yeah,
Does that help making a band? No.
That just goes to show how hard the instruments are.
So, what ends up happening is that Squidward just loses hope. Like he just gives up. So what happens is that later on in the episode, so he finally meets Squilliam right in front of the Bubble Bowl entrance, or to the elevator. I don't even know at this point. So he meets up with Squilliam, and he's like, Squidward was surprised that Squilliam showed up, and Squilliam's just like, I just wanted to watch you blow it. So where's your band? And so Squidward's like, I don't have a band. And then he's like, well then who's that? And then Squidward's like, that's my band.
Paul.
So then SpongeBob's like, we're ready to perform, Squidward. And so Squilliam just starts laughing, and he's like, well, Squiddy, this is exactly how I'd picture your band would look, and starts laughing. So, what happens is that the complete contrary. They perform what's almost single-handedly the best song in this entire freaking TV show.
No, I beg to differ that the Goofy Goober Rock is better whenever he's suspended from the Krusty Krab ceiling. I think that's better. I'm not honest with you.
Of the mainline TV series, excluding the movie.
Fine, the TV series, but I think Jellyfish Jam. Okay, fine, with lyrics, I guess the best song with lyrics. Jellyfish Jam is best instrumental.
Mm-hmm. So, with them going into the Bubble Bowl, they absolutely destroy it. It's like a whole Super Bowl performance. Like everyone's playing their part. They even have pyrotechnics with like whole entire like smog machines. They were like absolutely destroying it. And then Squilliam ends up fainting by how much
Oh yeah, how successful the band was. And the paramedics really had to take him out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this also proves Emerson's quote: "Great men have always done so and confided themselves childlike to the genius of their age, betraying their perception that the absolutely trustworthy was seated at their heart, working through their hands, predominating their another being," which is Emerson Chunk 2. So within this describes Squidward on how he basically gathered a bunch of nobodies, gathered them all and showed them to try and make a good band. He gave the spirit. He gave everyone like the chance to be the band that they didn't think they could be.
Yeah, but the band wouldn't have been there without SpongeBob. If SpongeBob never gathered the people, he would never had people to mold in his image, I guess.
Or it's like, so I guess to counter that, it's like the whole reason SpongeBob could have never rallied them. Like even if he wasn't there, like what about the other fish that were there to do the band? It's like without Squidward, there was never a band. This entire episode would have never happened if it wasn't for Squidward showing his inner self-reliance and pulling through, making a band.
So while SpongeBob did but gather the people, he didn't necessarily help instill the musician within them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So now going into evidence 5 for me, which was praising what he had before him, which is the episode, season 1, episode 14, in the infamous time-traveling episode SpongeBob 129.
Future on the floor.
Exactly. So within this episode, it's basically SpongeBob and Patrick are being extremely annoying to Squidward as he's trying to practice his clarinet. So what happens is that Squidward just goes to the Krusty Krab and goes into the freezer because he figures no one can interrupt him in there. He is fine. What ends up happening, he goes to the future because he freezes himself inside the freezer and the handle broke off, so he couldn't get out. So what ends up happening is that he wakes up in the future by a SpongeBob bot, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And he opens the door and basically just heats him up. And so when he wakes up, that's when the infamous future, that whole scene happens. So within this scene, he wants to go back into where he can have peace. But I guess the problem is that he doesn't want to be in the future and where SpongeBob and Patrick exist. So SpongeBob just casually brings him to the time machine they have in the corner of the future Krusty Krab. And so he goes back in time into the prehistoric era, which kind of actually looks like an old, like, what a seabed would look like about 65 million years ago in the age of the dinosaur.
So it's accurate?
Maybe. So, Squidward goes back in time, and so he figures he has time. But the problem is that he hears, like, shivering, like, he hears...
monkey noises.
Basically. And so he ends up finding the caveman version of SpongeBob and Patrick.
Yeah.
So, within this caveman version, he teaches them, like, to make them go away, he teaches them jellyfishing.
Oh, that's because, like, they were trying to play with the jellyfish, but every time they would touch it with their hands, they would sting it, and they're like, ooh!
Yeah. So it disrupts his music. So he ends up just, like, teaching them jellyfishing, which gets them away, but then it ends up, when they get zapped again, they get triggered by it and start attacking Squidward.
Yeah.
And so Squidward tries to run away in the time machine, and he ends up doing so. But when he does that, he goes into just nothingness.
Yeah, he goes
It's
too
just
far in
white.
the future.
There's just white background everywhere behind him.
Wasn't there lines as well?
I mean, I guess, because, like, when he finally gets his piece, when he starts saying it, he's all alone. And then you just see the various different text boxes of alone circle him, showing how trapped he is.
And how he actually doesn't like being alone. He actually likes the disruptiveness of SpongeBob.
Yeah. So, he goes back in the time machine after stomping the ground out of pure terror. And so, when he goes in the time machine, he just says, "I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go back to Bikini Bottom. I miss my Easter Island head. I even miss SpongeBob." And then he warps back into present day after doing the how should I put this? The slot machine time zone. So he gets back and he immediately is, "Oh, I'm back. I can't believe this. I've been to space, and then I went to the future, and then I went to the past, and then I was nowhere, but now I'm back, and you don't know how happy I am to see you guys." Which is exactly what Emerson was saying in the quote, "Accept the place the divine providence has found for you, the society of your contemporaries, the connection of events," which is an Emerson chunk too. This shows how Squidward has over the course of the episode, like, accepted where he came from. He wanted to go back. He missed everything he might have been miserable about then, but is what's showing is, like, what he wants now. Like, he's shown that he's accepted what he's had before. Like, he's like, he wants, like, everything to be how it was.
Yeah, but then, like, he wants it after he realizes how much he needed it, but once he goes back to his present time, won't he just then again just hate himself and hate, like, SpongeBob and Patrick again?
No, at least according to the episode's ending, where it's like, he did show like he was already kind of miserable when he realized it, but, like, over the course of the episode, it showed, like, how he really was desperate about it. Like, he didn't even really care if he had to deal with it again. He wasn't, like, alone in nothingness. He wasn't in the past where he had to deal with caveman, even worse IQ, SpongeBob and Patrick.
Okay, so this specific episode of Squidward would actually appreciate SpongeBob and Patrick more, instead of others, like other versions of Squidward, because I guess each episode is a specific version of Squidward and is a reflection of himself.
Mm-hmm. So that basically summarizes it for me.
Yeah. Oh, we are done?
Yeah.
Oh, damn, I didn't know we were done, my good old buddy. Well, thank you guys for listening. I know I'm here particularly sounding cringy. Yeah, you hate me, I hate you. Yay! We are ending this, and your suffering is done.
Yes.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Goodbye. Works cited will be above.